What's good, yeah? You've asked about the guide about the second most ugliest character in the entire game, right behind his Twin Fiend, which is obviously the reason why Twin is called Twin Fiend. Those two are probably both the most ugliest characters in the entire game, but enough of his ugliness, let's actually talk about his usefulness. And when it comes to his usefulness, obviously we gotta first talk about his kit. So right off the bat, he has probably one of the most versatile basic attacks. Like, it's legit finally a basic attack that isn't just basic. So this 110% AoE damage to multiple enemies in range, again not stated how many, with a 50% chance of increasing the range or inflicting magic rest reduction on the target for 4 seconds, and that magic reduction is 15%, which not quite attributes to your enemies taking 15% more damage. It's a bit more complicated than that, but you can just imagine your units taking more magic damage. Like, your enemies are just going to take more magic damage. Secondly, Soul Reaping drains the victim's soul after every kill to increase attack by 15% for 20 seconds, stacking up to 3 times, so giving him a 45% attack buff after killing 3 enemies within 20 seconds, as well as the ability to increase that on the A3 to 5, so 75% attack buff. And then lastly, the ultimate gathers energy and releases a soul orb upon hitting the target, dealing AoE damage equal to 240% attack, so rather low multiplier. Or he creates a purgatory that can either inflict slow on all enemies in range or deal 15% AoE damage per second. So he always does 240% damage, and then he either slows all enemies by a huge 75% slow, so the highest slow in the game, tied with Mary, as well as then either dealing a 15% AoE damage per second, lasting up for 8 seconds, so a grand total of 120% extra AoE damage, and also airborne units take half the damage from Purgatory. So obviously skill-wise, Greed is rather straightforward. Honestly, you really want to max him out completely if you want to use him effectively when it comes to like using him in a damage build, and that's also the key part. He has like kind of really 2 builds. A damage build and a support build, and that whole support build mainly relies on his magic rest reduction and his slow, but we'll get to that in a bit. Now Awakenings are straightforward. His A1 is really good. Like, if you have extra souls and you really want to seriously use this guy, you should get yourself the A1, because what it does is it takes away a bit from the RNG of his basic attack, so it's always going to be increased range followed by magic reduction followed by increased range followed by magic reduction, so it's less RNG, and it also increases the chance obviously from a 50% to a 60%, which is really really huge. So when it comes to his effectiveness, you really want him on his A1. Now A2, obviously attack percent is always nice, especially for epics with their low stats. And then the A3, we already briefly talked about it. It just gives them a higher attack percentage boost, which if you can stack this up, 75% attack increase is really really huge. Now on the A4 we have a straight up 8% crit rate increase, which is quite nice in building the character. And then we have on the A5 the Cast of Purgatory triggers 2 special effects at the same time, so he's going to slow as well as deal AoE damage, again taking out more of the RNG, basically referring to like one of his heads casting one skill and the other one casting the other one. So yeah, that's why he has that that RNG part inbuilt. But enough of that, let's actually talk about builds, because that's what you're here for. Build wise, honestly, Greed starts to lose its effectiveness after gear rate 119 when it comes to any form of damage really. So there's only a certain point to which you should actually take your Greed when it comes to building him, which is pretty much around this level. It's a set effect, but with only half decent stats, at least when it comes to real endgame or late game build obviously. And post that, we're going to talk about it, is going to be support Greed, because that's where he then would really shine. So first things first, let's talk as usual about the left side, where we have a simple straight up Calamity weapon. Obviously could be Calamity Annihilating Might or Whirlwind set, but I would just recommend Calamity because he's really only useful in gear rate 1, so you do want as much attack as possible to take advantage of the game mechanics as well as the usual overcoming the enemy defense to do your damage. Now for the right side, it's also rather straightforward. We have attack percent main stat, some attack flat, crit rate and attack speed. Obviously the attack speed, it's quite a nice piece, but the attack flat isn't as important, as well as the attack speed not being too crucial. So we'd like first off just aim for attack percent and then add in crit rate, and then the rest is just bonus stuff really. Secondary, you want a crit damage piece, be it obviously on the top, middle or bottom. And then obviously on that crit damage piece, you do want attack percent and crit rate in the substats, with attack percent with attack speed being a bonus. And here's kind of the same piece again: attack percent in the top, crit rate in the bottom, with attack flat and rage region being bonus stats. So your stats should look somewhat close to this. It's pretty much you need around 200% plus attack bonus. As you can see, we have around 250, 260%, and then obviously as much crit damage as you can. So especially if you have it, try to find attack percent pieces that always also have a crit damage subset. I just wanted to keep it simple, which is why we're just running a crit damage main set, which is why we have 66% just through this piece alone. Artifact wise, honestly, it's pretty straightforward. It's going to be artifacts that increase attack. So Keen Wisdom, obviously because it's accessible, is one of the prime choices. And then we have Tear of Twilight, which is going to be obviously just an upgraded Keen Wisdom on the condition that you can keep his HP higher than 80%. As well as, where do we have it? The new improved Keen Wisdom White Tower Trinket, which is just a fancy Keen Wisdom at the end of the day, giving you a 12%, which obviously also makes it more costly to upgrade. So Keen Wisdom is honestly something you can just go with, especially because we already talked about it. Greed is going to lose its effectiveness when it comes to higher level content. Alright, yeah, before we get into the last uses of Greed, it's obviously time for the main event, I guess, which is going to be a Gear 119 run using Greed. And for that we obviously have Wrath. His gear is honestly not that important. If you have some nice gear, you can slap it on him, but I am going to make sure to not really use him, besides obviously taking care of the boss once everything else is dealt with. It's just going to cut down the time of the run. But if you don't have spare gear, you don't need to gear him. Greed is in the old set we've already talked about, so as far as you would really take your Greed when it comes to dealing damage, as well as again running still Keen Wisdom. Abomination just has a mumbo jumbo of sets equaling out to around 150% attack, 100%, around 100% crit rate, 132% crit damage, as well as 88 attack speed. And that crit damage only really comes from those two main sets right here, as well as again a Keen Wisdom as an artifact. Volker's not going to get used. You can keep her completely ungeared, and if you for example have an Invigoration set, you can also give her one to give to someone else. Same goes for Laura. If you have an Invigoration set, put it on her, but rest doesn't matter. Hollow just has a Rage Region build, so around 100% attack, high attack speed, high Rage Region, as well as artifact wise an Oneric Band, just so to like make it a bit more realistic, I guess. Mary is kind of the same thing. High attack high HP, very high attack speed, and then high Rage Region. All the other stats are unimportant. And then artifact wise, Nightmare Samsara to allow it to restore even more rage. And here just a plus 10 would be fine enough, but it's going to just increase the gear requirements a bit. And Maul over here is straight up 200% attack, some attack speed, 100% crit rate, as well as 70% crit damage. And again, rounded off with a Keen Wisdom as his artifact. Now we have our second healer, which is going to be a Vortex on high attack speed, 100% healing effect, as well as then around 300% HP, as well as some Rage Region, even though that's not really crucial. And artifact wise, it's an Illusion Epitaph, just to increase the single target healing, but it could be another artifact. And we're going to finish it off with a pretty standard Dolores no Rage Region, as well as high attack, just for using attack percent with attack flat substats on the right side, as well as a Calamity set with attack percent weapon and attack percent attack flat chest piece, and another Keen Wisdom. So here we go, 119. Let's get it rolling. we're going to start out with Abomination. Important for this Abomination is the fact that he's A1. So he's going to stun with his charged attacks, which is just going to buy us more time to deal more damage. And we're just going to bring in Dolores, Greed, and then obviously wait for a cost to return. And I'm going to move myself over here so you can see my ultimate usage. Here's already time to bring in Maul, activate Dolores as soon as she's ready, and then we're just waiting that we're able to bring in Hollow so we can stop Abomination from dying. See, there we go. Hollow in, Maul shortly before Dolores' ultimate ends if it's possible. Bring in our first Laurel, take her out instantly, activate Dolores again, activate Maul as well as bring in Vortex, but not there, right here, so we can also heal Abomination, which is going to become quite crucial to the end of the fight, because there we're going to block the boss using Abomination, which is going to buy us a lot of room when it comes to finishing this stage, because this boss does a lot of wall damage, and that's not necessarily something we would be looking forward to. So now it's the time to bring in Wrath, take him out again to get the cost back, bring in Volker, take her out again just to boost the attack speed of Greed Abomination. So yeah, here we go. As you can see, we're just bringing in Laurel whenever she comes in, taking her out again, using our ultimates to freeze, stun, and just overall delay the enemy. And yeah, it's pretty much just buying time, keeping a wall healthy. So here it's rather solid. Obviously it also has a bit to do with RNG when Greed decides to trigger his effects, and also if his ultimate coincides. If his ultimate is activated at the same time as your Dolores buff is activated, because that's obviously going to make it stronger. So there could be a bit of randomness, and you might need to restart this fight once or twice to get it to work. And then it's just more of the same. A lot of freezes, stuns, slows, and everything we can do to keep the enemies away from our wall as long as possible. Also, as a general tip, try to activate, if your units are at like 90 or like 80%, try to activate their ultimates before taking out Laurel, just so you can charge them up to 50% again instead of having them start from 0. Just makes rotations easier. And here again we can just freeze, and you can already see it. The boss is not moving, he's actually attacking more, he's actually attacking Abomination, which is really right up our alley and is a huge boon when it comes to keeping the wall healthy. So as you can see, pretty much everything is dying, albeit slowly, but it is dying. And we're just going to rotate the ultimate still. And I think you can already see why Soulborn Arcana set here would be really, really useful. Because if we're using or rotating all those ultimates, it takes us legit like no time to get that permanent 50% damage increase, be it on Greed, Maul, obviously not A-Bomb, but on Greed or Maul. And as you can see, we've already just put in Wrath, and Wrath is just here to help us work on the boss a bit. And yeah, it's just a slow, speed it up. We can also kind of take him out just so we can get some more ult in, or pretty much keep up Dolores uptime. And Volker honestly really is the most useful here, because she kind of only applies the same thing that Mary applies anyway. So Volker's kind of a dud, besides obviously cutting down respawn times for units. So yeah, ever so slowly we are chipping away at the boss's health. And considering the fact that we're just running our epics here with some rather questionable gear, obviously besides Greed, our wall health is pretty high at the 75% mark, and that's honestly really nice, but mainly comes down to Abomination being able to stall the boss. So let's say you don't have Abominations A1, you might need some better gear on Maul and Greed, or it could work, but it's going to be closer. But yeah, the most important part is try to keep A-Bomb alive. You could also just put in a normal tank there, but then you need better gear if you just want to obviously kill the enemies and you don't have A-Bomb to help out with content. And now the question is, oh, what am I going to do with my greed then when it comes to higher level content? And the answer is pretty simple. You're going to rely on the support features, and for that we're also going to just slap a support build on him. And how does a support build look? So it's not specifically about the way you get the stats, it's just more about the stats themselves. So what you want is, attack is completely unimportant. On a support greed, the attack could be whatever. Higher attack obviously better, gives you slight bit of an edge, but at the end of the day isn't too crucial. HP is quite nice if you have some, makes it easier to keep him alive, but also not too important. And then obviously attack speed. Attack speed is where it's like the first stat you really want to go for, and that's going to be easiest achievable if you use an attack speed main stat. And why are we talking so much about attack speed? And that's because we really want to cycle his basic attacks, giving him the chance to apply that magic res reduction. And then furthermore, we also have 112% rage regen, which is the second stat you should be looking out for. So ignore the healing effect being 157. Rage regen. And rage regen is just there so we can consistently and faster just spam his ultimate, giving the huge movement speed reduction. And then obviously to top it all off, artifact wise, we have a couple of choices, but Nightmare Samsara is really, really good, allowing him to restore rage towards his ultimate for every 5 attacks, or even Spellcaster's Echo, giving him rage after using his ultimate, which is referred as a skill. So that also allows him to cycle better. So it's either really between Spellcaster's Echo or Nightmare Samsara when it comes to him restoring rage. So it's pretty much him just spamming basic attacks, using his ultimate, and honestly, that's about it. So you might be wondering, oh, but this build is kind of weird. Where would I even use this greed? This greed is, straightforwardly speaking, GVG. Honestly, GVG is where you're really going to be able to see this greed. For example, let's have a look at my formations and let's just build a potential greed build on, just build a potential greed build on the fly. So here we go. Just Nightmare. Ignore the fact that it's Torador. It's not really that important. Could be Rev, could be anyone. If you can, obviously you want him to run with the Lord bonus, but that's also not needed, especially because if you have a Boreas, it would be way more effective to boost Boreas instead, because he's really not going to do a lot. And then it's really just very simple. You place down your greed down here. He's not going to be targeted by mages, marksmen, whatever, as long as you have a tank right here. If you just have a tank down here, there's a chance that either Boreas or Greed is going to die. But as long as you have a unit right here, you're pretty much fine. And let's just swap Torador and Abomination, because why not? And then you're going to be running with a team like this. And the main benefit about Greed in GVG is the fact that you're going to spam the 75% slow, which really, really slows down ground units. And now the important part, he actually hits air. So the big part about GVG is the fact that everything dies against magic. That's like kind of rule of thumb. Everything dies against magic, which is why people try to use units that are somewhat magic resistant, and also use units that don't need to get blocked or can't get blocked, which is flyers. And there are certain flyers that have relatively high magic resistance, or just magic resistance in general, which obviously makes it hard for like a Boreas to kill them, which is why you would then need to place in a piercing unit, someone that does piercing damage to then allow your Boreas not to worry about the air units, because your Piercer is going to take care of that, and that's where Greed comes in. Greed is going to use his ultimate right here rather frequently, slowing down the enemies, lowering their magic resistance, which is then allowing your Boreas, Karmet, any source of magic damage you really have to take out your enemies, or even potentially you could, for example, place a Hatset here, even though I'm quite sure she's going to get killed if you place her there, so ignore that tile actually. But yeah, that is pretty much the use for Greed when it comes to GVG. And there's also only really like a second prevalent use for Greed, and that's going to be gear rate 121 or 120. He still isn't completely unusable when it comes to gear rates, but he's not going to be the one that does the damage. So I'm just going to show you like a quick where or how would you place your units. I guess it's not necessarily about the units, it's just mostly about placement, just so I get it out of the way. And we'll follow it up with a quick use greed to clear gear rate 119, because that's at least content that is realistic for people that get greed for the first time, and might even allow some of y'all to clear it if you still haven't. So we're going to get to that in a bit, and here we're just going to prepare a standard build. Obviously, you can just replace Iona and Zealous with any mage, preferably legendary ones or ones that are made for gear rate 121, or you're going to need to crank up the gear requirements to 1,000,000. So obviously it's not meant to be just like put Boreas and win in, but it's at least at the moment kind of like this, right? You just put in Boreas and you just win. Yeah. Is what it is, but we're just going to get through it here. And then rotation wise, obviously you try to cycle your Laurel as fast as possible. So yeah, like I said, just ignore the fact that those enemies are still at the walls. But as you can see, even with Zealous and Iona, we're at least doing some decent damage. But our Hollow is ungeared, or basically has the gear we took from Greed, so you don't really need to worry about them dying. And then right here you would have Mary over here to freeze the enemies, Greed to slow them down extra, as well as obviously apply, as you can see, that broken red shield right there, which would be his magic rest reduction. So every time you see a feed, like some feed pop up, that means obviously the slow, and here you go with the shield, that's his magic rest reduction. So yeah, next step is obviously going to be the end of this, which is going to be talking about other areas where he might be useful. Guild Boss, unless in very, very, very specific circumstances where you might have a super cracked Zillitu as well as Hex, Greed is absolutely useless in Guild Boss. I wouldn't recommend, honestly, even in that scenario, let him stay out of Guild Boss. Artifact material rate is kind of the same, considering the fact you only have one platform unit and you would be either using it for a healer or a single target damage dealer or poisoner. Greed is also not good in artifact material rate. Tide, honestly, at the end of the day, everyone is good in Tide, so you can, especially if he's A5 fully maxed out skilled, you can give him some good gear and he's going to work in Tide. And then faction rates, really, Trial of the Cultist, obviously him being a cultist, he's really good in faction trials, so he definitely has a place there. And then especially if you're really early on still, he's obviously going to help you progress to the promotion rates when it comes to mages, as well as obviously, was it even mages? I hope so. And then also he can do some work when it comes to XP rate and gold rates, so if you're still struggling with clearing an XP or gold rate stage, you might want to take a peek at Greed again, because his slow is really, really nice in keeping enemies away from just rushing past your defenders. So yeah, this concludes the Greed guide. As you can see, Greed is honestly quite a nice champion, but at the end of the day, he really does lose efficiency or effectiveness when it comes to later content. Besides Guild Wars, honestly, he's a beast in Guild Wars, especially if they have the magic damage dealing units to take advantage of it. And yeah,